Hey everyone, I'm Jay Smith, and this is Bradley Kendall, and this is After Further Review, where we're going to do our best to cover the entire college football landscape in 60 minutes or less. So Bradley, after further review?
Houston, we have a problem. So we'll start with Houston, and coming into this week, we talked about last week, I was really high on Houston.
Yeah.
I thought they were really primed to pretty much go undefeated up until the Louisville game, and then they come into Navy, and Navy throws 5 passes, gets 63 rushes, and bull rushes them.
I mean, we know that Navy is a rush-dominant team, and we know that passing the ball, they're similar to Georgia Tech in the way that they run their offense. I didn't expect them to hang 46 up on Houston. It was just kind of one of those games that I really did not pay attention to going into the weekend. I knew that Houston was playing Navy, but I didn't really give Navy much of a chance.
I really didn't either. After I think they got beat by Air Force the week before.
Yeah,
they weren't playing well.
Navy season just wasn't going well up until that point.
They didn't have Keenan Reynolds from last year, so they really didn't have a lot of returning pieces.
And Navy hasn't beaten I don't think they've beaten a ranked team in several years.
Since South Carolina, I think back in '84.
Yeah, it's been a long time since, especially since they've won at home. So, great win for their program. I saw a video of the students, the cadets, rushing the field after the game. Obviously, a big win for their program.
Yeah.
And if you're Houston,
that really knocks you out. I mean, I hate to say it.
Well, not necessarily, because if they can beat Louisville, realistic. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to, but if they're able to, take care of Louisville, then what do you do with them? They're 11-1. They have a win against one of arguably the best teams in the country. Mm-hmm. So where do you put Houston?
Their chances are slim. They obviously have a bad loss now, and their schedule's really going to hurt them.
Oh, yeah.
They would have 2 good wins if they beat Louisville and Oklahoma, but I just think, especially because they're not a Power 5 team, they really had to run the table.
So you're going to go ahead and cross them out of the,
I'm going to cross them out, unless something really catastrophic happens to all the rest of the Power 5.
But 11-1, I feel like they got to go to a Big Six. Or New Year's Six.
Big Six. Yeah, because UCF did it a couple years ago. They lost 1 game, and they still made the Big Six.
Mm-hmm. Especially now, if they lose to Louisville,
then we're looking at a different story.
Then I think your chances diminish greatly. But
and especially for Louisville, I mean, we're going to get to this later, but that really hurts their chances of creeping back up, not winning a conference championship.
Their strength of schedule just went down.
It did. They really needed the Houston team to be undefeated coming into that game.
Definitely. And the next game we're going to look at was an ACC matchup. Virginia Tech, UNC. Virginia Tech, they creeped back into the top 25. I think they were sitting at 25th.
Yep.
Now this game was at UNC.
It was raining. It was pouring.
In the middle, right in the middle of the hurricane, similar to the Notre Dame NC State slugfest.
So you saw a lot of down numbers for both teams.
But what I really did not see coming was Virginia Tech hanging up 34 on the Tar Heels. I mean, UNC never even got in the end zone.
I think what's more surprising is UNC only scoring 3 points.
Yeah,
their high-powered offense the last 2 weeks, they beat Florida State with 37 points. I mean, they didn't have anything clicking.
Now, granted, it was in the middle of a monsoon. I mean, I don't think the field conditions, I didn't watch a whole lot of the game, but the field conditions did not look as bad as NC State.
Oh, that
there was
terrible.
Half of the field was in standing water for the majority of the game. I think they actually delayed it.
They had like a 45-minute delay.
Before the start of the third quarter, just because the field conditions were so bad. Credit, though, to the fans that stuck around the entirety of that game with NC State being able to pull out win. But, for UNC, I know the conditions were bad.
But then again, Virginia Tech still was able to handle that and put up 34.
It just doesn't take away from the fact that Virginia Tech beat them by 31
and they did it with a kind of a lack of offense. I mean, their quarterback only had 75 passing yards. They obviously ran.
In those conditions, 75 passing yards is...
And they were
really
still able to move the ball well and score 34 points even with that.
Yeah. Now, were there who won the turnover battle? Do you know? Is there anything pulled up on that?
Turnover battle, let's
imagine
see. Their quarterback didn't throw any interceptions. Mitch Trubisky threw 2 interceptions. I would imagine there was a ton of fumbles.
Oh, yeah. Missed snaps and mishandled.
But Virginia Tech, completely handled every facet of the game, every facet of the game.
They played better football under terrible conditions. Yeah. Terrible conditions.
And that definitely helped them. But, sure. You look at this Virginia Tech team, and Justin Fuente, what a job coming in his first year and really turning this program around from where they were last year.
Yeah, so far so good. I wouldn't say they're turned around. I wouldn't classify them.
They're definitely in a better position than they were last year.
Possibly.
Sure.
They're on the up and coming, I guess you could say, like Miami.
Yeah, and that helps because in terms of the ACC Coastal, that knocks Carolina to 2 losses now.
Yeah.
Now they're 2-1 in the conference, so the conference is really what matters. But that gets them a win over the team that could contend with them in the Coastal.
For sure. Next game that we're going to look at was an SEC matchup with A&M hosting Tennessee. This was game of the week.
Game day. Yep.
Really lived up to the hype, honestly. I mean, it was
did.
a good game, double overtime.
Yeah, I mean, midway through the game, it was like 28-7 Texas A&M. We were like, okay, this is Tennessee's luck's finally run out.
Yep.
But look at that. Butch Jones rallies his troops and
pulled back a 21-point deficit.
All of a sudden, they were tied.
And I think this says more about A&M's ability to outlast Tennessee, yet another Tennessee surge.
Yeah.
Because Tennessee's been doing this all year.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew there was going to come a point when they were not going to be able to pull it out. But I think this says a lot about A&M. I know it was at home, but it was still a double overtime game.
I think the difference was between Tennessee, their games before where they were able to pull it out. This is a much better team they played in Texas A&M, and A&M was actually able to close the game out.
But if you think that game is at Tennessee, do you give A&M? I mean, I know that A&M.
Yeah, I think A&M was the better. I don't know, actually.
That's tough.
If it was at Tennessee, it might be a little different. Yeah,
Yeah, honestly.
especially in overtime.
Now, I don't even see Tennessee getting in a 21-point hole at home. But
no, you wouldn't think so. But then again, was it the Florida game that was at home?
It might have
home for that.
It might have been. So Tennessee has just been spotty all year.
They didn't move in the AP. So
No.
obviously they still respect them as a team. They lost in double overtime on the road, so that goes for
Yeah,
something.
and like I said, once you get to overtime in a game, there's a lot of momentum that, based off of, honestly, for Tennessee to come back from a 21-point deficit, force double overtime against A&M, and for A&M to still be able to hang on and win, again, I think that says a lot about Sumlin and the Aggies' resiliency and being able to finally knock Tennessee over into the L column.
Really impressed with Trevor Knight. His numbers might not have spoken for what he truly played, but based on who they've played before, this was their really big first test, and they handled it really well.
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
really did.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Next game that we're going to look at was Alabama and Arkansas. Some people gave Arkansas a chance.
Just because they were 16.
Some people gave them a chance coming into this game. It wasn't a total blowout, but it never really felt competitive.
It didn't. It was kind of like the A&M, I think when they played, it was a couple weeks ago, they played Arkansas. It was the same Arkansas team.
Yeah. When
Arkansas was kind of close, but then they really never established themselves as in the game.
Yeah, 49-30, obviously Arkansas giving up 50 points to Bama.
Just too many turnovers.
Yeah,
they couldn't have that happen.
It wasn't, they didn't play a clean enough game to really give themselves a chance to be competitive. Exactly.
7 turnovers, yeah.
Yeah.
And 3 interceptions from Austin Allen. They had a chance. I think they were down like 2 scores and had a chance to come back in it, but threw that pick in the end of the game. And,
just sealed their fate.
Bama, that's another win for them.
Yeah.
Along with the Ole Miss win that would really help.
So it's going to be A&M and Bama.
Pretty much,
that's your SEC.
The good thing for Tennessee is that they're in the SEC East, and they already beat Florida.
Okay.
So they already have a leg up, and that one loss isn't really going to kill them yet. But they do. This is a big game coming up for them against Bama.
Oh yeah,
this is huge.
For sure. And that leads us into our last big game from this past weekend with the ACC matchup, FSU and Miami. Now this came down really to a blocked PAT in. Honestly, one of the more physical games probably the most physical game I've ever seen between 2 ACC schools.
It was like Jimbo Fisher said, it was Miami, Florida State.
There were players going down
Brad Kyle lost a tooth.
Over the there was blood splattered on both sides. A really, really hard fought game. Last week I thought that FSU was down and they were out. I really did not give them.
You had Miami. Yep.
I had Miami. I thought that Miami was going to win convincingly, honestly. I did not think that Jimbo Fisher was going to be able to rally the troops. I'm impressed with their performance, especially at Miami.
I think in terms of Miami, they hadn't played anybody yet, and we're going to get to this later. We'll talk about it. This was kind of their first big boy team they were playing.
Even if they're not playing anyone, I don't think that you can discredit what they've been able to accomplish. Because with Houston, Houston was 6th last week, and they hadn't played anybody except for Oklahoma.
Now Miami, you can't say that. They played Georgia Tech. That was their best win.
Right, but I still think that as far as judging a team, I don't think that it's necessarily fair to base their skill level or competency based off of weak opponents.
I just didn't think, because Miami's team last year I didn't think was
No, I understand. We talked about this a good bit. You made the comparison that Miami was the same team as they were last year when Clemson beat them at 56, 58, nothing, whatever it was at Miami. But I was at Deshaun's presser today, and he said, I don't remember what the question was, but it was talking about 6-0, expectations for the postseason. Do you think this team can make a run? Is it special like 2015? And Deshaun was basically like, well, it's a totally different year. It's a totally different team. It was a totally different team. It's a totally different environment. I mean, yeah, there are some players back. Yeah, the coaches are back. But, every year you try and approach it with a different type of attitude.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Miami got, beat down multiple times last year, which resulted in the firing of Al Golden. But at the same time, like, Mark Richt knows how to coach. And he's a chippy guy. Yeah. And I really, yeah, they lost this game on a block PAT, which just adds to the lore of that entire rivalry series. But at the same time, Miami's going to be back, and they're going to compete year in and year out for that Coastal Division.
And it's good for college football.
Yes.
And I don't think they're there yet. I don't think they were deserving of the ranking that they gave them. I still don't think they're even a top 25 team.
Really? Well, that's amazing.
They have no wins.
Though.
They have no wins to prove it. They're basically slotted the same with Western Michigan right now.
Neither does Ohio State, and people got them.
Ohio State beat Oklahoma. That's
again. I'm not sold on Oklahoma. I just don't.
They're
Baker Mayfield has been spotty a bit. So you're telling me that Miami and Oklahoma play each other, and you're going to give the edge to Miami?
I think Oklahoma hands down has more talent than Miami does.
Wow.
Think about it. Like, I know you don't want to say that last year mattered, but the team that Miami had last year, they have Brad Kaya, but they haven't really gained anybody. They haven't gotten many skill players from last year. Into this year.
No, but they still bring in
Oklahoma
an excellent
returns a great
recruiting
roster.
class.
Well, yeah, but they're freshmen, like you said, young teams, young players aren't really.
That's
ready for that
why
stage
I'm not
yet.
as sold on Ohio State is because they're so young. I know we talked about last week how being a younger team just increases the probability that you will falter on a big stage. I just think that Miami, and I know it's only been a year removed from the debacle that was last season. I get that. But at the same time, it's a new coach, a coach that has done very well at an SEC school. Okay. That's a hard place. Georgia's a hard place to hold a job.
Yeah,
Let's be honest.
Kirby Smart's struggling.
Yeah, he doggone right he is. So Mark Richt is I just don't see him, leaving Miami in 2 to 3 years because he can't win.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying this year's Miami team is not what everyone thinks.
So you think that they need a different quarterback than Brad Kaya, or you just think they need weapons on offense?
They need weapons
defense?
around them. I really do. They're not as talented.
Well, they'll bring that in with recruiting. Now that Miami is back competitive, watch. They'll have a top 15 recruiting class.
I wouldn't say they're competitive yet. They have Carolina,
competitive with Florida State.
They have UNC and they have Virginia Tech coming up. Those are two formidable opponents in the ACC Coastal. If they can contend with them and they can win the Coastal, then yeah, I'd say they're back. But if you look at their schedule, they beat Georgia Tech, Florida A&M, App State.
I understand that their schedules have been weak. Their out-of-conference schedule is a joke. I totally get that.
I just haven't seen enough.
That's fine, but I'm pretty confident that within the next few years you're going to start seeing more and more recruits go back to Miami because maybe it may not be that the U is back, but it just might be that players are flocking to Mark Richt because they want to play for him, or they're from South Florida and they just want to go to Miami instead of going up in Georgia or an SEC school.
They're definitely more likely to go there now that Al Golden's out.
Yeah.
Now, I think Florida State will still take a lot of talent.
I think Miami's much better off. I think they're long term. I think they're much better off with Mark Richt.
It was a great hire, but I don't think they're there yet. Give them a couple years.
Possibly once they get the recruiting classes and get the talent going. So. Now we're going to move on to the ref segment. Again, same format as it has been. I'll ask you 4 questions. You'll offer your opinion, and if I have a differing opinion, which is more than likely, then I will throw.
Especially with this first one we got.
Right, the yellow flag. So first question: what does this loss say about Miami, and how does it shape the remainder of their season?
I think it gives them confidence that they can play with a good team, but I don't think they're there yet. They didn't pull out the win at home against a Florida State team that was really struggling. Like I said, they got the 2 teams coming up, Virginia Tech and North Carolina. I don't think they're there yet. Mm-hmm. And I think, they could do better than they did last year. I don't think they're looking at winning the Coastal quite yet. So
where do you think they fall as far as bowl games go? Not necessarily New Year's 6, but
they went 8-5.
What should their goal be? What should their goal be for this season? If you really don't think that they can contend for the Coastal, what's their goal? What do they want to? It's a rebuilding year, right?
Yeah.
It's a first-year coach.
Well, obviously the Coastal is going to be the one you shoot for. They went 8-5 last year and got just smacked around against big teams. Mm-hmm. And they competed against Florida State here.
Yep.
I think you just want to get better. I think you want to develop your young guys like they have, the recruiting class that came in. So I think Mark Richt wants to at least get 8-5 because that's what they got last year. I think that's what he's shooting for at this point.
8-5 is a bowl loss. 8-4, 12-game regular season. So
Okay, so 8-4.
8-4 would be that'd be a good season.
Or they went 7-5 or had a bowl.
I mean, I think that you want to win a bowl, obviously, but that's a tricky. I'm not going to say that I disagree with you. I just think that is a trickier question because if they can't compete for an ACC championship yet. I understand that, and then the Coastal. Excuse me, they were not quite there. I concede that the fact with their loss to Florida State. Now, if they had beaten Florida State by 1 point, heck, we could be sitting here talking about how.
I mean, when you lose on an extra point like that.
Exactly. So that's why this win, or this loss rather, for Miami it just doesn't.
It doesn't feel as bad as it could have been.
No, it was an extra point.
It's better than they've been last year, but they didn't beat Florida State, and they didn't beat a team that really been struggling.
They didn't, but again, extra point.
And if you put them, Florida State and Miami against Virginia Tech and UNC, I think Florida State would just fare better. I would feel more comfortable at a team like that.
Depends though. With Florida State and Louisville just lingers in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
It does. I can't. I mean, wow, they got whopped by Louisville.
Miami got beat by the team that got beat by Louisville. So that's
by a point on a blocked field goal.
They still got beat. I mean, they didn't beat.
They
them.
did. It's fair. It's fair. I agree. They're not there yet.
And I think they got outplayed. I really did. Florida State looked
First half was all Miami.
First half, Florida State got in the red zone a few times and just didn't punch it.
No, they didn't score until right before the half. So Miami was controlling that game, and then it almost reminded me of back when Clemson lost to Carolina 5 years in a row, and it was like stuff just fell apart. It just it would work for a couple quarters or work for a few drives, and then just crap would just start happening that you would just look at each other and you just be like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So I think Miami, for whatever reason right now, has a hump that they need to get over in Florida State. Maybe this isn't the year. I know that's a heartbreaking loss.
That's tough.
Heartbreaking.
You had the win, and you had the fans there finally.
Maybe next year they'll get over get over the hump. Anyway, next question: which team needs a win more, Stanford or Notre Dame?
I'm leaning to say Stanford because I think Notre Dame has already dug themselves such a deep hole. And think about this: when we talked about does Brian Kelly need to win to keep his job, he's already locked up a 6-year deal. So let's just say that his job is going to be fine.
Oh, there's nothing.
Brian Kelly's going to be. He's not leaving Notre Dame this year.
You don't think so?
He's not leaving Notre Dame this year.
Even if they don't make a bowl game? Because it's
even if
viable.
they don't make a bowl game.
And they got Stanford. They got USC.
Well, if you look at Oklahoma when they had Bob Stoops, they didn't make a bowl game one year. They were like top 10. They went like 5-7. He stayed there. I don't think you go 1 year and overreact like that. I think in terms of Stanford was supposed to be a top 7 team, and
Christian McCaffrey was supposed to win the Heisman.
I mean, they got a better player
last year.
Stanford's got the better player than any of the players in Notre Dame. I feel like Stanford needs.
Oh, so you would take Christian McCaffrey, even though he's a little dinged up, over Deshaun Kaiser right now?
I think Stanford needs to get back on track because they still have something to contend for.
They've had 2 blowout losses in a row.
They've still have something to contend for, though. Notre Dame's got, at this point, they're 2.
No, Notre Dame's season is a wash. I agree with you there. But Stanford, they're not competing for what, a bowl game?
Well, I mean, they have 2 losses in the Pac-12. They're realistically probably not going to win it.
They'd have to lose. Washington would have to lose 3 games in their because they hold the tiebreaker. Mm-hmm. So let's see. Stanford got killed by Washington, and then they lost to Washington State. So
here's my reasoning. Stanford still has a chance to make this an okay year. Notre Dame, this is already a big letdown.
This is why Notre Dame needs to win more.
But even if they win, they're still 3-4. If Stanford wins, they're 4-2. They still look like it's a pretty good year. I think Notre Dame is already the fans.
If Notre Dame loses this game, they're 2-5.
They're already it'd be 3-4 though. I mean, it's not that much better.
There's a big difference between 3-4 and 2-5. When you have 5 losses in week 7.
I just think for Stanford, they've already lost 2 in a row. If they can win this, they already get back on track.
I don't know. I gotta disagree because I think that this is
close.
This is Brian Kelly's job right here. If he loses this game, think about how bad Stanford has played the last 2 weeks. Yeah. If he loses that game, Notre Dame fans are going to be like, "What are we doing with this joker? Get him out of here!" With the way Stanford's played the last 2 weeks, and Christian McCaffrey has done nothing, and Notre Dame can't even beat them, Brian Kelly's gone.
I mean, they already lost to NC State and Duke.
Yes, but that was a hurricane condition game.
They lost to Duke.
Have you seen the last 2 games that Stanford's played? It has been a joke.
Do you think a Stanford win would make Notre Dame feel better, or do you think a Notre Dame win would make Stanford feel better?
I don't think it would make them feel better. It would be a hollow win because they'd be like, well, we beat them, but
Which
they're
team do you think
trash
would feel
this year.
better with a win, though? Stanford beating Notre Dame or Notre Dame beating Stanford? Because they already feel bad.
Stanford would feel better with a win because I think that, like you said a little bit ago, they realize they're almost in free fall. If they lose to Notre Dame,
this is the thing. Notre Dame's already in free fall.
Exactly. So Notre Dame needs to stop the free fall as soon as possible. Stanford is right there on the cliff, and all it's going to take is one push, and they're over, and they're so. Because
at this point, to me, a loss to Notre Dame looks a lot worse for Stanford than a loss to Stanford
has played terrible these last 2 weeks.
Notre Dame lost to Duke.
Yes, but that was a competitive game, though, and Duke is not.
Washington State and Washington are good teams.
The point is with the way that Stanford has played these last 2 weeks,
I think it's much worse than Notre Dame.
For Notre Dame to lose to Stanford, who's played terrible the last 2 weeks, and now be 2-5, how Brian Kelly holds his job after that is a mystery to me. That just doesn't make good sense.
Yeah, I just
You've got to get rid of Brian Kelly if you can't beat Stanford, especially with how they played.
Stanford, though.
Have you seen their last 2 weeks, though?
Have you seen Notre Dame's last 2 weeks? If they lose
the
to a team
game they
that
played
lost
against
to Duke,
NC State was in a hurricane.
If they lost
there were players
to a team
sliding from me to the camera on the field.
Lost to Duke. If you're Stanford, that's red flags, man.
Stanford lost to Washington by a landslide. They lost to Washington State. I think it was 42-10 going into the.
Washington State is a good team. They're a good team.
42-10 going into the fourth quarter.
Washington and Washington State are better than NC State and Duke.
We got to move on. No. Notre Dame.
They both need a win, but I think.
Agreed.
I think Stanford needs it more.
All right. Are Louisville's college football playoff hopes gone with this Houston loss?
I wouldn't say completely gone yet.
Well, what has to happen besides
the fact
that they beat Houston?
Because the ACC, Clemson, if Clemson falls out, I don't know. I think Louisville's the closest team, along with Michigan or whoever you want to say, the closest team that is not going to win a conference championship to get in. We could say that.
Right. I agreed there.
Just the way they played Clemson, I think people saw they're a really strong team. And even if they still beat Houston, Houston's still going to be a top 15 team if they win out and get to that game. It's not going to look the same, but Navy's a solid team. Houston
It doesn't give Houston a bye.
I don't think they're completely gone yet. I think there's realistic circumstances where they can still get in.
Oh, I agree. I think that they're still in the hunt. They're on the outside looking in.
It's just tough because we don't know what's going to happen yet. We just have no idea.
Yeah, you can't predict. They may very well lose to a no-name school, and then all that just goes straight out the window.
And Louisville's schedule's really favorable from this point out. They don't play any hard teams.
For right now, because of the poll system, they're on the outside looking in. Whether or not that's the right decision, we'll have to talk about that when we get to our top four. Yeah. But last question to go ahead and wrap this up for the ref segment is Nebraska a sleeper, 5-0, top 10. Nobody's really talked about Nebraska at all this year. Are they a sleeper for the Big Ten championship?
I think to me it's kind of like West Virginia. They have a chance, but I don't think they're going to do it. They haven't played anybody yet.
That doesn't matter.
What do you mean it doesn't matter?
That's
all we have to go off of.
Exactly, but they've beaten everyone they've played. So what?
They barely beat Oregon. They barely beat Illinois.
Everybody has
bad. They were losing to Illinois in the fourth quarter.
We barely beat Troy. So you could say that.
But we beat Louisville. You have a good win.
Okay.
Nebraska has no big wins yet to prove anything. Now they have the Ohio State and Wisconsin games coming up, so I don't think you can really pose
Nebraska, if I looked at their schedule, it's ridiculously favorable. The only games that really challenge them are at Wisconsin and at Ohio State.
They can break their year.
Back to back. They should be worst case scenario 9-3, probably 10-2, maybe 11-1 if they get lucky, 11-1. So I'd say I feel like they're.
At this point
they're talented.
To me, they're kind of like Iowa last year. They're a talented team.
I think Iowa was. Everybody could tell Iowa was fake. I don't think Nebraska's fake. I don't think they're that bad.
Maybe a little bit better than Iowa, but I don't think they're quite there yet. I just haven't seen anything yet. I think Tommy Armstrong is a good player, and
you haven't seen him because you haven't watched them.
I have watched them.
You've watched Nebraska?
Nebraska. Watched them all last year. I've watched a couple games this year. They've struggled, but Tommy Armstrong's a good quarterback.
Yes, but that just, every team struggles, except Alabama. But we played terrible against Troy, and so that argument, that's where you lose me. You're like, well, they haven't played anybody.
Well, that's the thing. They haven't proven it.
Well, they've beaten everyone they've played.
Doesn't that count for something? You got to look at how they played and who they played.
Houston, up to that point.
Oklahoma. Nebraska has no big wins.
They're still admit to me that they're going to get 9 wins this season.
Okay, they'll at least get 9 wins.
9
wins against who, though? That doesn't mean anything. We're talking about strong teams here.
Big Ten's stronger than the Big 12.
I don't think they're in the top 10, number 10 team in the country at this point. Just from what I've seen, they haven't proved anything. That's how you rank teams, is how they prove.
They're top 10 because they're undefeated. I can agree with it. They shouldn't be top 10, maybe top 15, maybe top 20, somewhere in the 15, 16 range. But I absolutely think that they could, if crazy crap started happening.
They should be down where West Virginia is right now. West Virginia's in the 20s. And
they're 5-0 also.
They're undefeated in the 20s. That's where Nebraska should be at this point.
I think they're better than people are giving them credit for, honestly. Again, they're undefeated.
Yeah.
I know they're top 10, but just the way their schedule shapes up. If crazy things started happening to Ohio State and Wisconsin, they could slip in easily. They're in the other division.
At this point, I think they're like Miami. What is it with the number 10 team in the country always being so weak?
I don't know.
First Miami, now Nebraska.
That wraps up the ref segment. So now we're going to move on and look at one big thing from each of the Power 5 conferences, starting with the ACC. Honestly, I think the biggest story from this past weekend was the Hurricane games. NC State Notre Dame in particular, because there was standing water on most of the field. And literally the only way that NC State won this game was on a block punt that was returned for a touchdown.
That was the only way they were going to score a touchdown.
Yeah, there was 2 field goals that were made from like 30 yards, and that was it.
It reminded me a lot of the Baylor-TCU game last year that was just underwater.
Yeah.
And there were probably 10 fumbles in this game.
Not much going on, really. Besides the Florida State-Miami game,
we kind of already addressed that. The Coastal's starting to shape up now. It's going to be interesting coming up.
And then moving on, Big Ten. Ohio State, they had struggles early with Indiana, but they took care of them. It was 3-3 at one point.
In the first quarter, every game, of course, is close in the beginning.
Okay, fine. Ohio State took care of Indiana because we know how sold you are on Ohio State.
38-17.
And that sets up a matchup with Wisconsin. Now, is that at Wisconsin, or is that going to be?
I believe it's at Wisconsin.
Okay, so do you?
That's a tough place to play.
It is. Now, I do think that Ohio State is good enough to win at Wisconsin. Are you on that boat as well?
Oh, I think they'll win. I think their offense, JT Barrett, is just going to be too much for Wisconsin. Wisconsin was barely able to score 7 points against Michigan. I think they're going to need.
That's why their offense can't keep up.
They just can't.
It doesn't matter how loud it is.
And when you saw they put up 30 against Michigan State, well, who's the Michigan State team we're really looking at right now? They put up 30 against a weak squad.
My point was Stanford. That's my point with Stanford and Notre Dame. But yeah,
What do you mean? What are you trying to say?
Well, with what you said, what Michigan State team is going to show up to play, and that's my thing with Stanford is they've been so terrible these last 2 weeks. Going back to the question about Notre Dame, who needs to win worse?
We'll go back to we'll talk about the Washington thing later, but that's kind of my point too. You're strengthening my argument here, saying Stanford was really bad
for Washington, with the way that Washington has played against them and Oregon.
But who'd they play? Stanford and Oregon.
We'll get to that later. Moving on.
You got no chance to win that argument.
Moving on. Big 12, the Red River rivalry game. Really, it was a good game to watch, honestly.
Offensive outburst.
Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Kind of, in my opinion, saved Oklahoma's season, spoils Texas a little bit.
Yeah, that's the game that Texas plays every time is they play a high-scoring game with no defense. They still haven't fixed it yet.
Yeah, Charlie Strong, if he wants to really hang around at Texas, he's got to find a defense.
The only thing he has going for him right now is they have a young roster. And they can say, we'll improve in the next 2 to 3 years. But that puts them at 0-2 in the Big 12.
Yeah, recruiting is never an issue for Texas. So there's really after 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I'm talking about they have young players right now.
Right, I understand that. But at the same time, you can't use that excuse forever. We're going to have 2 or 3 years. You're getting good guys every year, Texas.
And
do something with them.
The problem is you look at their schedule, they're playing the Big 12, which they have some hard teams coming up that they got to play.
They do have a tricky schedule.
0-2.
Yep. Finally, Pac-12, kind of 2 things here. We talked about this pretty extensively. Stanford slide, it continues.
Yep.
Pretty much at the, almost at free fall. And
mainly McCaffrey slide continues.
Well, he's a little dinged up, but yeah, overall, it's been ugly. And then Oregon, a complete mess. Oh my gosh,
they're not the same Oregon team we had with Mariota a couple years ago.
They gave up 70 to.
They gave up 70.
Yeah.
You usually see them scoring those.
Well, that's the most that they've ever allowed since 1941. Second most ever. and they're off to their worst start at 2-4 in 30 years. So, and they have given up 197 points in that 4-game slide.
I'd love to see them in Texas play because I feel like that game would be like 67-65 because there's zero defense.
I mean, what happened to Oregon? They were 2 years ago. They were playing for national championship.
That goes to show how good Mariota was and how he really made them a good team. I mean, it was kind of like
because their recruiting hasn't been terrible.
No, I mean it hasn't been awful. I mean they have some players. They had the guy last year come from over from Eastern Washington. He was a good quarterback. They just haven't had the full team.
Yeah, Oregon's just they fell off the face of the map.
They really did.
Quick.
They are digging in a quicksand at this point.
I mean, almost out of nowhere. They were gone. Everybody's like, "Where's Oregon?" Oh,
yeah, I mean they struggled last year.
They may not make a bowl game with the Pac-12.
Unacceptable. That's unacceptable for Oregon.
Expectations now.
Well, yeah, it doesn't help when you had expectations of championships.
This reminds me. I don't know if Auburn was this. Well, no, I take that back.
Yeah,
Gene Chizik. Gene Chizik. It was what he won it in 2010 with Cam Newton, and then 2012 was when he got fired, and they went 2-10 or 3-9.
I think they went 3-9 the year before they made the championship. I think.
No, that was a couple years after he did. He was awful, and they fired him. That's what this reminds me of. Is the ascension to national prominence, and then just they disappear
because they had Cam. And now they have Mariota.
Yeah, Auburn really has not done too much the last.
No, I mean they're not top 25 now, but
they've been spotty.
They're just not the same Auburn team. Yep.
And then finally to wrap up the Power Five, we look at the SEC. Texas A&M, they outlast Tennessee in double OT. One of the better games from this weekend. We talked about it a little bit earlier. And with A&M, I'm becoming more sold on Sumlin. And and the fact that he's a fifth-year senior, because this is what I didn't realize. This is the first time in someone's tenure at A&M that he's had an upperclassman start at quarterback.
Wow.
I mean, think about it.
They had
Manziel and
Kenny Hill.
Exactly. So you got a fifth-year senior. He's been around.
He's been there, done that.
I think A&M can give Alabama a good run for their money.
This is just like they've had the last couple of years. They had with Manziel, they had it with Kenny Hill. They started great. They were 5-0 at like both times.
But experience.
Yeah, now that's what I'm saying. Now that's what they have.
Experience.
Hopefully, this experience will get them over that hump, and maybe if they don't beat Bama, still make plays up
maybe experience has something to do with your performance. Maybe Ohio State,
But
because they're so young.
JT Barrett's an experienced quarterback. You want to talk about experience here?
But we're the youngest team in the country. That's all I'm saying. That's
talent. They got a lot of talent.
Talent doesn't mean anything if you can't do anything with it, though. You get in that pressure situation.
Oh, if you got talent, though, I mean, they've done plenty with it.
That's what like Dabo says, though. As coaches, all we can do is put players in position to make plays. As a player, you've got to make those plays. It doesn't matter how talented you are.
They've made all the plays they need to.
They have, but that lends to my argument as to why I'm just not sold on Ohio State. Because when I look at teams like A&M,
I know they're young.
That's all I'm saying.
But Ohio State's not A&M. They're totally different teams.
Fair enough.
Totally different teams.
Fair enough. That wraps up the Power Five, rundown, and then now we're going to do our top four, current playoff bracket and look at those. So do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
I'll go first. That's fine. I had, number one, I had still with Clemson. I still think, they finally started clicking their offense. This is, I think, the best game they've played all year, top to bottom. I know it was a weak opponent against Boston College, but they really impressed me the way they looked.
I can buy that argument.
Yep.
Okay.
And then number two, I still had Louisville. I still think those are the top two teams in the country. Nothing's changed that yet. Mm-hmm. Number three, still Ohio State. Big test this weekend. If they can handle Wisconsin pretty well, unlike what Michigan did, maybe you can slide them. Maybe you can slide them past Louisville. I don't know. But 1, 2, 3, I think are really, really strong at this point.
Oh yeah.
And then number four, I finally had to put Bama in. I had them out last week at number 5. I just think with the quality win they had against Arkansas, now they have Ole Miss and Arkansas. Washington just doesn't have those quality wins to match up. So.
Right. Now, who did you have the first two out? Did you have a 5 and 6?
I had Washington, and then I believe I had Michigan at 6. No, I had Texas A&M.
Okay. You had A&M. Okay,
yep.
Gotcha. My top four is pretty different from yours. I think we had two teams that were in the same spot at 2 and 4. I have Ohio State at 6 as the second team out, again, because they're young and just the fact that, and a second, once I listed all my teams, I want to go through, offensive performance and statistics and how those match up with the top 6 that I have. But I have Ohio State at 6. I have Clemson at 5. Clemson dropped out of the I know. Clemson dropped out of the top 4 for me because they
With
played
a 56-10 win against BC? What do
they played
deserve
well
that?
against BC, but again, Deshaun and Gallman echoed the sentiment again today. They hadn't played their best football. If the players are saying, "Yeah, that's as good as we're going to play, coach," then I can be like, "Okay, Clemson, this is as good as we're going to get."
And that's the best part, is we've done this without
I
even playing our best
understand.
yet.
But like I said last week, thus far, Alabama at 4, Michigan at 3, Louisville at 2, and Washington at 1. Washington, the way that they have played the last couple weeks, and again, the only reason I have them jumping Louisville is because Louisville's on the bye. They
All right.
walloped Oregon.
But you got to look at who they played, though. I mean, it can look great when you play
right,
really
but
well.
It's still the fashion in which they beat them was just so absolutely.
We beat Louisville, who is currently your number 2 team. Washington beat Stanford,
We've
who
been
is
over
basically out of the top 20 at this
We've
point.
been over this argument as to why I have Louisville higher than Clemson, and that is because, and I still firmly believe that if the game is played on a neutral location, for example, let's say both teams make the college football playoff.
Okay.
It's the semifinal game. What would it be? Number 2 Louisville, number 3 Clemson, something like that.
Yeah.
They play each other. You don't think Louisville's not going to be out for blood? Louisville is going to be hungry for that game. So in that matchup, I give the edge to Louisville.
We won the game with 5 turnovers. Lamar Jackson played fantastic. We still were able to beat
that third quarter.
of course,
That's
yeah,
the
but if we
only
don't
thing
have
holding
that
me
bad
back.
third
If
quarter.
we hadn't have played think about the game for a second, Bradley. We didn't score the first quarter.
Okay.
We didn't score.
Put up 28 in the second quarter.
We didn't score the first quarter. We didn't score the third quarter. We played horrible, almost as bad as we did against Troy.
Okay.
Better opponent, but still terrible. We started coming back in the fourth quarter and put up points in the second half. The only way we contended in that game was through our second quarter performance of 28 points in like 8 or 9 minutes or something.
But we turned the ball over in the red zone. We had offense going.
And that's my point. When you do that kind of stuff on a neutral location against a team like Alabama, Washington. Have you seen Washington?
Bro, we're not going to have 5 turnovers every game.
Washington has scored 297 points this year thus far. That's second in the country. That doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who they've played.
What do you mean it doesn't matter?
They're killing them. They're
Baylor
killing them
played
week
a cupcake
in, week
schedule a
out.
few years ago, and they had the most points in the country. Didn't matter.
Look though, they've only allowed 85. They've scored 297 points and they've only allowed 85. Michigan actually, this is something I did not realize. They clock in at number 1. They've scored 300 points this season.
They had about a third of those in the Rutgers.
Do you know how many? Do you know how many they've given up? 62.
Okay.
They have scored 300 points and given up 64. Let's look at Ohio State for a second. They're almost equally impressive.
Less points than Michigan they've given up.
They've scored 266. They've given up only 54. So defensively, impressive.
I mean, you can look at statistics like this, points, 4 points.
But you're trying to tell me that JT Barrett is more dynamic than Michigan's offense, and here I am telling you that Michigan scored more. Now,
don't tell me JT Barrett is not a better quarterback than Wilton Spade. Are you kidding me
it's
right
an
now?
offense, though. It's not a single-man system. I mean, you can't. I mean, yes, one player has a huge effect on the game, whether it's Deshaun or Lamar or
34
whoever.
points. They had 20 more points than the Rutgers game. Ohio State just
The
didn't
point
score
is
78
when I
against
look at my teams that I have Washington at number 1. They're second in the country in points for. I have Louisville at number 2. They're third in the country at points for. I have Michigan at 3. They're number 1 in the country, points scored. Alabama at 4. They're 5th in the country at points scored. Now listen to this, because this is going to shock you. Because I bet you did. Clemson, right? I have them at 5. Guess where they rank nationally?
16th.
16th.
We had a rough start. We didn't play as well the first. We've crept up though.
We have.
Yeah,
But
we're on the
not
rise,
even
man.
in the top 15.
We're 6-0 with the best win in the country.
Offensively.
I don't care. We won the
Offensively,
games.
we cannot contend right now, if we play football like we're continuing to play football, we
Okay.
cannot contend with Washington, Louisville, and even Michigan on a neutral playing surface.
But they haven't played us though. They haven't played a team like us though. They've played Rutgers and Colorado.
But all we've
and
played
stuff
is
like
Troy. Or I'm sorry, all we've played is Louisville. That's it. That's our one game.
Auburn's a solid team. Auburn's in the top 25. right now. They're 4
Okay,
and
do they
2.
really deserve to be in the top 25?
I mean, they're a decent SEC school at this point.
They're
better than Colorado.
You never know with Auburn.
To me,
Let's
it's
just
better
be
than
honest.
Colorado.
You never know with Auburn. My point is this: when you look at the offensive production of the teams that I have in the top 6, Clemson is they are 8 spots away from the nearest competitor, which is Ohio State, and I have them ranked lower than Clemson.
You could put too much on these.
How do you put Clemson ahead of teams that have scored more and have more offensive production and better defensive statistics?
Better opponents they've played. Clemson had to play Lamar Jackson.
Besides Louisville, that's it. That's
We
it.
played Georgia Tech. We've played Auburn. We played Boston College. 2 other cupcake games. Okay, you can't put all your marbles into these points 4.
No, I understand.
If we would have done that a few years ago, you'd have like UT San Antonio.
I understand. Well, I think Western Michigan right now is tied for like 4th or something in points.
Exactly.
My
Who
point
they
is
play?
my point is this: the reason that I don't have Clemson in the top 5 is because I hear week in, week out from players that they're pressers. We haven't played our best football. I look at statistics and see that we are well behind the other leading teams in the country when it comes to offensive production and defensive efficiency. We're just not as good right now. Right? That may change. They may get Alabama with the stretch that they're going into. Who knows? They may drop. You just never know. But when Alabama puts up 49 on Arkansas, who a lot of people consider them a favorable opponent, and they just throttled them. It was never a close game, and we have. We played well against BC and Georgia Tech, but Troy and those kinds of performances linger in the back of my mind, and I realize, wait a second, we're good. Clemson's capable of a lot. I think we're capable of going to the national championship like we did last year, but we haven't. I know what we're capable of. I haven't seen it yet. When I see it,
what do you need to see?
I need to see.
Do you want us to put 65 on Florida State? Is that what you want?
I think you really.
So far, we've taken care of business.
Look here. If Clemson can't handle Florida State like Louisville did, raises some questions.
We're on the road, first of all. Florida State has gotten a little bit better since then.
Gotten a little bit better. They were number 2 in the country when Louisville played them. You telling me they weren't good when Louisville played them?
And they lost to UNC, but they beat Miami. So if
they lost to UNC on a freak last-second field goal.
But if they start playing better.
I'm just saying, when Louisville played them, they were number 2 in the country, dude.
It'd be on the road, first of all. I don't think you.
So that's it?
I don't think you have to blow out a team 63-20 to prove anybody.
The point is Louisville has done that. Washington has done that. Michigan has done that. Alabama has done that. Ohio State, yeah, they're getting there. Clemson, we've done it. We didn't do so well against a top-tier opponent like Louisville. If we play that same type of game where we're really crap for 3 quarters and then somehow have a miraculous second, third, fourth, first quarter.
Michigan can keep up with Louisville and Washington? They played Wisconsin and scored 14 points, man.
I understand, but
if Ohio State puts up 49 points against them, what do you say?
I think honestly, what I really want to see in the semifinal. Again, I want Clemson in. But a Michigan-Alabama game and a Louisville-Washington game or a Clemson-Washington game, whatever, would be.
Oh my gosh, I would love to play Washington.
Incredible.
We would take them, man. We would absolutely take. They haven't proven anything against a big opponent yet.
They're playing in the Pac-12. Their week in, week out schedule.
But they haven't played a top-tier team.
And we
yet.
did, and we struggled
mightily.
We won. Mightily.
We won
because it was at home.
We won the game, and that's all that matters, man. That's why we're up in the polls, because we won.
I'm just trying to explain to you why. And I look. Credit to Clemson because it's hard to come off a national championship.
And it's hard to win a game with 5 turnovers against the Louisville team.
Absolutely. We should have lost the game. You and I were sitting there in the stands in the fourth quarter looking at each other with about 8 minutes left going, wow, we're going to give this game away. We're going to give it to them. So there were some moments. Troy, when it was halftime.
I have no idea how to explain that.
And everybody was just like, we're beating them by 3. What's going
like
on?
The Wisconsin-Georgia State game.
Yeah, we've had our moments where everybody's just been like, Clemson, what are you doing? Alabama hasn't had that. Michigan hasn't had that. Louisville hasn't had that. Except for us. Washington has not had a moment like that. Even Ohio State has not had a moment like that. They just haven't had moments where you sit there and you look at them and you go, what are you doing? Are you trying to give this game away?
I see what you're saying.
That is my only... That's my major, that and the lack of offensive production.
I still think you can put them outside the top 4 at this point. They're undefeated with a win against Louisville. That's all you need. That's all you need.
Alabama's performance against Arkansas bumps them up in addition to Michigan's performance against I know it was Rutgers. I know.
You're going to use that.
But they beat them 78-0.
Who cares? Who cares? It was Rutgers.
They did what they needed to do, though.
Ohio State beat them 58-0. So they didn't score 78.
Well, then I got Ohio State at 6. I know Clemson played very well against BC.
You can't use the Rutgers game to decide who is the better team.
I'm just saying that, again, they haven't had a scare. None of those teams that I have in the top 4 have had scares yet this season. Now, if that changes next week.
I mean, Ole Miss, Alabama, almost lost that one.
I mean, it wasn't as bad as our
pretty
performance against Louisville. No,
Yeah,
but it was never like, wow, are you watching this? Alabama's going to lose type game. I mean, it was close for a little while, but excuse me, never felt like it was going to be an upset. I mean, come on.
You can say all you want about Troy. We didn't play great. Just look at last year. We didn't play great in the beginning of the year, and look how we got up. We started to play a lot better. We beat Louisville.
Again,
we beat BC.
I think for right now, Clemson's an extremely talented team. I don't discredit anything they've done this far, but I know what we're capable of. I just haven't seen it. When I start seeing it, then
there's two totally different sides.
Or other teams falter.
You say that, and I say we haven't played our best yet, and look where we are now. So that's
possibly. I mean,
I see what you're saying. You probably see what I'm saying.
If we run the table and we play very well against Florida State or even mediocre, and we go on to win the ACC championship, then absolutely I'll have Clemson in the top 4, and absolutely they're deserving of going back to the semifinal. I mean, your ACC championship, ACC champion, absolutely. Yeah. But I just take a very non-poll-esque approach.
And I look at it as when you're playing in the playoff, you're playing the top.
See, I feel like you have Clemson at 1 just solely based on the fact that they beat Louisville. I mean, why else would you put them at 1? Explain to me.
We've beaten Louisville. I know we played bad in the Troy game. We're looking better. We beat Louisville, who is your number 2 team overall in the country, who's my number 2 team overall in the country.
Okay. Is that it?
That's all you need.
To be number 1 in the country.
Undefeated.
Alabama isn't going to, they don't stand a chance. No way.
I didn't say that. I said we are more deserving of number 1. We have the best
because
win.
We beat Louisville?
We have the best win in the country. We're undefeated. I think we're a great team. I think we could play with any of these teams.
We have a win against one of the better teams in the country. We do not have the best win. It was not the best performance.
What's the best win? Against the best team, and you beat that team. That's considered
tough.
The best win.
That's tough.
Don't say Washington against Stanford.
No, not with how Stanford has fallen off. I think right now you could probably you could say Washington, Oregon, but Oregon's fallen so far off. I think it would either be one of Michigan's dominating performances or it would be one of Alabama's performances. Whether it be Arkansas or whatever. Again, Clemson has had Clemson definitely. I agree. They have, because it's true. They have a win against one of the better teams in the country.
So right now, the only thing holding you back is that Clemson didn't look as strong at the beginning of the year.
They just haven't played their best yet.
They just gave you some questions.
They just haven't played their best. These other 4 teams, until they start to falter, they're going to stay where they are.
But if the playoff came out today, Clemson wouldn't be out of the playoff.
No, that's how the poll system works. Louisville, as
and
unfair
they don't deserve to be out of the top 4 team-wise.
So you don't think Louisville should get in?
No. I'm saying Clemson deserves to be there. You can put them 1 through 4, whatever you want.
Right now, yeah. I mean, I'm not really ranking them based off. I'm ranking them based off who I think are the top 5, like who are the best teams thus far. Not the most deserving. Not everybody gets a trophy. Who are the best? Who are the top 6 teams?
Might be the best team.
Not necessarily.
If you're the best team, you deserve to be number 1.
I still think Louisville's the best team. The only reason I have Washington at 1 is because Louisville is on a bye. But I think that Louisville's the best team. But right now they're on the outside looking in. There's nothing else they can do except win out and hope that somebody loses.
I think you just got to look at who we've played and who they've played. Washington just doesn't have it for me yet.
And they've killed.
They haven't played a top. They're going to play.
All they've done is lose to us.
These teams are going to play top teams when they play in the playoff. Alabama, their best win's Ole Miss. They barely beat them.
Thus far. What if they beat A&M? What if Alabama? Hold on now. What if Alabama?
We're not looking at that.
I know.
At who is right now.
But the conversation arises because if Alabama let's just say takes it to A&M after what A&M has proven thus far this season.
Tune in next week then to figure.
That's all. I mean, seriously, if they take it to A&M, are you not going to put them at 1 or 2? Really?
Oh, I'll put them above Ohio State. Absolutely.
So 2?
Yeah.
I mean, what? Are you
Depends
kidding
on
me?
if Ohio State destroys
If
Wisconsin.
Alabama destroys A&M, it is criminal not to put them at 1 or 2 and have Clemson above them. Come on now, there's no way. Listen.
I'd put them 1-2.
Clemson beat Louisville.
I put Alabama
barely.
above Louisville.
Alabama destroyed A&M. It's Alabama for right now. Come on.
But do you think Louisville's better than Texas A&M? If so far A&M, they're a good team.
That's a good question.
They're not great
honestly.
because A&M, all we have to look at is that they barely squeaked by Tennessee and almost gave it away.
Yeah, that's a good question. Do you
Now,
think A&M is as good as Louisville?
I wish I could do 1A, 1B, 1C because at this point, 3 teams have really just separated themselves to me.
Yeah, it's a lot less clouded than it has been previous. Because a lot of teams that were undefeated coming into this week lost. I think it was like 20-something that were undefeated coming in, and
We're
there's
down to
like
11.
11 now. Anyway, we've probably gone off on a tangent there for about 20 minutes. But those were our top 4. Again, you had your top 4. List them out again just so everybody remembers them real quick. You had...
My top 4? Mm-hmm. I had Clemson, Louisville, Ohio State, and Alabama.
And I had Washington at 1, Louisville at 2, Michigan at 3, and Bama at 4. So now we're going to go to Twitter questions, different polls that we've done throughout the week. Do you have some of those pulled up?
Yep, we got some good tweets sent in. We got Mark Wright, who sent out a question: whose loss hurts worse, UNC or Miami? I'd probably say UNC. They got blown out 34-3. That puts them at 1 behind Virginia Tech. It's tough to dig out of.
Miami. The way that they lost, it's just gut wrenching.
But think of the Coastal.
I didn't care who won, and I was just like, oh, that sucks.
You think losing 20-19 is worse than getting
on a
34-3?
The game was in a damn hurricane.
They got blown out.
They lost on a missed PAT at home with the whole hype of Miami's
UNC
back in the
had
top
great
10.
hype.
Not like Miami hype. Miami
They
was put in the
shouldn't have had that hype.
Doesn't matter. They had it. Miami fans were already. I mean, you knew that if they beat Florida State, boy, they were going to be singing like larks from the tops of trees. Seriously, they were going to want to put them in the top 6, 7, maybe 5. I mean, serious. I mean, Miami would have been up there. So, I think that the way that they lost the game and just. I think if they've lost now 7 in a row to the Seminoles, that loss hurts worse.
I would go to UNC. You go Miami. Yeah. Both bad losses.
Yeah.
Next question from Hunter Huckabee. Do Dobbs and Hurd in Tennessee stand a chance against the number 1 team in the nation? Do they stand a chance against Alabama?
Against Alabama? Well, they stand a chance. But I just think that...
It's at home, right?
I just think that Tennessee, going back to how spotty they've been at times, like they've had really good game or good stretches in a game, and then they'll have really bad stretches in a game. He ain't gonna come back against 21 against Bama. If they get down by more than 10 points, game's over.
And I think it's like the Texas A&M game. They had magic, but it wasn't magic against good teams.
They ain't gonna have that much magic against Bama.
Jarrett Wright, what is the name of the NC State second-string center? Look it up.
Yeah, not sure we can pull up that one on the fly.
Jake Wassler, he says, Jay, your point scored theory is bogus. Who do you have in this semifinal, Clemson or Michigan?
Against which team?
Clemson versus Michigan. If it was number 2 Clemson versus number 3 Michigan, who would you have?
Wow.
Good question.
That is a really
First of all, let's address your first
question.
point. Your point scored theory is complete bogus. Let's just say that.
No.
Let me give you one stat. In the NFL right now, guess who is number 2 overall in scoring?
In the NFL?
Yes.
What's that got to do with college football?
Just go with me here. The San Diego Chargers, they're not the second best team in the country. Okay? So points scored isn't everything.
But that's the NFL. This is college football.
I'm just saying, when you score points, it matters who you play. It doesn't matter who you score, how much you scored.
Right. But again, the point goes back to the fact that Clemson, you've admitted to me, you have admitted to me that the only legitimate team that we've played thus far is Louisville. Then
I said Auburn too.
Who?
Auburn.
Okay.
They're on the same level as Arkansas.
We'll just say Louisville. We're 16th in points scored. We're not offensively.
We're 6-0.
That numbers never lie. Numbers never lie.
Neither do 6-0 with the number 1 win in the country.
Win against one of the better teams in the country is not the number 1 win. Say what you want about the points.
Do a definition.
No, I'm just saying.
Man.
Look at you can say whatever you want about points scored and offensive and all that jazz, but I'm just telling you that at the end of the day, when you look at Clemson's offensive production versus the other teams that are in the top 6, 7, 8, wherever, we are way, way behind.
So you think Michigan could outscore Louisville? Right now, Michigan has 300 points this year,
if Michigan can find a way to contain Lamar Jackson, I mean, we kind of did it for a stretch.
Good luck with that.
We did it for a little while.
For a little while, he still put up 30.
I give
how many points?
I give the nod to Louisville. I think they're the best team in the country still. So
no, they're not. You said Washington.
No, I said that's because Louisville was on a bye. That's the only reason I have Washington at 1. In that particular game,
argument, but okay.
No, not really. I mean, they were on a bye. You got to. I mean,
well, if they didn't do anything to harm themselves.
Okay. Anyway, I would pick Clemson in that game because experience and Deshaun Watson. They're a more experienced team than Michigan, even though I think Michigan would give them a heck of a game. That would be a fourth quarter type game.
All right, we just got a message in from Jack McLaughlin. Could Texas A&M, Bama, and UT have a triangle of death where they all lose to someone? If so, does that eliminate all of them from the playoff?
No, it doesn't eliminate them all.
It could happen, but I don't think it would not eliminate them.
Who would how does the tiebreak work? Do you know, for the second, like, what's the second tiebreak in the SEC? Is it common opponents?
Well, right now it would be.
It better not be points scored. It
would be common opponents because right now Tennessee is in the East, and Tennessee would. Okay. It would be between Bama and A&M for the SEC West.
Gotcha.
So whoever won that game would get the crown.
No, SEC champion could probably lose 2 games and still feasibly get in. I mean, wouldn't you agree? I mean, there's no.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that one of those 3 will get in.
All right.
More likely A&M or Bama.
I think. Let's see if we have any other questions. We had one other. Yeah, my brother said. Ryan Kendall said, if the NFL draft was tomorrow, who would you pick first pick?
Oh gosh.
Good question.
Wow. Who would
thinking way ahead.
Yeah. No kidding. That's a really tough question. If you have somebody, feel free, because I wouldn't take Lamar just because
Lamar has one more year, so he's not going to be in the NFL draft.
And I mean, just like, he's too small as a.
Maybe Jabril Peppers for Michigan. Yeah. He's one of the most athletic guys I've ever seen.
Who's going to be first in the draft this year? That's the better question.
If it was the Chicago Bears, they would be taking Deshaun Watson. You'd think so.
No, yeah, you would
That's
think.
really one of the only teams I can think of that really doesn't have a.
But I saw some quarterbacks were not as high as Deshaun, but they were pretty close.
Deshaun's up there.
I'm trying to remember. I don't pay attention much to that during the season. Yeah, during the season with college football.
Later, but I would put
I'm
Deshaun
watching college football.
I don't know who's going to be picking where.
But good question. I mean, that's something that you just definitely don't think of too often. And then now we're going to try and do our upcoming week preview. We're going to look at all the top 25 team games in 5 minutes. So that's the goal there. Go ahead and pull up.
I will pull up the rankings.
Yep.
Okay, so we'll start at the bottom.
And hold on, I'll get my timer ready so we can go ahead and get the whole thing out in 5 minutes. But we
want
only
to do some picks. What do you want to do?
Yeah, we can go through do some quick picks, but we'll see where we get. So like I said with Navy.
The Navy game, I think it's postponed because they play East Carolina, and I got an update today that says the weather is going to not permit them from playing this week, so that we'll skip forward with that.
Yep.
Western Michigan and Akron. Western Michigan, they're 6-0, and last year they played Michigan State really well, so I knew they were kind of a solid out of Power 5 team coming into it. They'll probably be, I don't know much about Akron. They'll probably be.
I don't know much about either of these 2 teams, so I'm going to give the nod to Western Michigan.
Go with the ranked team.
Yeah. Auburn's on a bye, so we'll skip ahead to Arkansas. They have against Ole Miss. Tough game, but I think that the Rebels pull that one out.
I'll probably go with Ole Miss. I think the QB battle is really interesting because Austin Allen, once again, is such a great quarterback. I think it's going to be a really close game, but I would get the nod to Ole Miss.
Utah at Oregon State. I give the nod to the Utes. They're going to go to 6-1.
Oregon State's been really let down this year. I'll go with Utah too.
West Virginia at Texas Tech. They're 4-0. They're the only 4-0 team right now in the country because everybody else is either 5-0 or 6-0. I think West Virginia keeps going.
I'm going to go with the upset pick. I'm going Texas Tech. I think their quarterback play is great.
Gotcha.
They had 2 really close losses this year, and it's on the road, so I'm going to go with Texas Tech.
Oklahoma at 19. They host Kansas State. Yeah, Boomer Sooner, I guess. We'll
roll with them.
4-2. 4-2.
Yep.
Florida at 18. They are hosting Missouri. I think Florida could show up with the JV team and beat Missouri this year.
Loses this.
Yeah, that game has already been decided. Virginia Tech at 17. They travel to Syracuse. Do you see the Carrier Dome causing any problems?
Sneaky game coming off a big win for Virginia Tech, but I think they're riding too high to lose this game.
Okay.
Fuente won't let them lose.
Miami, they dropped to 16 after their loss to Florida State. They host UNC, so two teams that are on a losing streak right now. But I
have to go with UNC.
Really?
I'm going to have to go with UNC. I think just because you were talking about the weather really impacted that game. I think UNC's offense is much better than Miami's. And I was never a firm believer in Miami. And North Carolina's
I'm going Canes. I think Mark Rick at home will get that one done. Boise State at 15. They're 5-0. They host Colorado State. I think Boise State.
I'll go Boise State too.
Yep. Florida State at 14. They host Wake Forest. Seminoles.
Should go Seminoles. Yeah. Wake might give them a little bit of trouble.
Well, they were 4-0 for a while.
Did a couple years ago.
I don't see that one being too much of a trip-up game.
If they're able to come back from all the injuries they had.
Houston at 13. They host Tulsa. I think the Cougars will rebound. They'll get 6-1.
Oh, they'll definitely rebound. Greg Ward will get them going. Yep.
Ole Miss at 12. They travel to. We talked about this game earlier. Yep, we already picked that one, so we'll move on.
Baylor, Kansas.
I think Baylor.
Poor Kansas. Shout out to the Jayhawks. They had a chance.
Oh, I know.
Almost beat TCU,
missed the field goal.
I think Baylor's offense is just going to be too much.
Baylor, 6-0. Would you have expected that?
Wow.
Yeah, 6-0. Nebraska, also, they're 5-0. They're in the top 10 now. Bit of a sleeper team. They travel, we talked about this earlier, to Indiana. But I see Nebraska winning the game.
I think it'll be close because it's on the road. Indiana's 3-2 or 4-2. They're a decent team, and they struggled with Illinois. Nebraska did so. I'm going to go Nebraska, though.
Okay, Nebraska. I was about to say, don't pick Indiana. Tennessee at 9. Big boy.
Bama's too much.
Playing Bama.
Bama's just too much.
I don't see Tennessee winning
this game.
They're
looking for revenge, but I just think Bama's going to take
Bama's
take
the roll tide roll for that one. Wisconsin, they are going to be playing. They're hosting Ohio State.
This isn't even going to be close.
Really?
Ohio State's going to run over them.
I think that Ohio State will win. I do think that Wisconsin will give them more of a game than you're anticipating. I think it'll be fourth quarter, maybe 7 to 10 point margin of victory, but I do think that the Buckeyes are going to get this one done.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll go Ohio State. Yep.
Louisville, they host Duke. I think Louisville.
Ooh,
really?
I'm going to go Louisville.
Yeah, do not let your Duke fandom blind you, please.
Louisville. It's sorry for David Cutcliffe and the gang.
A&M, Washington, and Michigan are all on byes, so we'll skip them. That brings us up to Clemson and NC State. We're going to skip that one because that's our game that we'll preview in a second.
And the top two we already took care of.
Yeah, we looked at Ohio State and Wisconsin and Alabama at Tennessee. So went through that in 4 minutes. That was better than I expected.
We had a couple disagreements, I think. You picked Miami, and I picked UNC, and then I picked Texas Tech over West Virginia.
But honestly, not a whole lot. I shouldn't see a whole lot of shifting this week.
You should
in the top 25. I mean,
you do have the Tennessee-Bama game, and you have the Ohio State-Wisconsin game. So
but
top
besides
10.
that,
now,
it shouldn't be.
We say that sometimes during the week, and
true.
it proves us wrong. So
this
we'll see.
is true. But again, with 4 through 6 on byes, now. I mean, theoretically, if Alabama and Ohio State lost, you could see Clemson at 1 because Michigan, Washington, A&M are all on byes, and also you could see Louisville jump at least a couple spots because those teams are on byes. That remains to be seen.
Yep.
So, but anyway, that's been our top 25 game upcoming week preview, and now we're going to move on to the game this weekend between the Tigers and NC State. And preview
this
a
looks
little
a
bit
lot
of action.
Much bigger of a game because NC State's 4-1, coming off a win against Notre Dame.
Yeah.
They played us tough. Was it last year? It was like 58-41, wasn't it? It was a close game.
Yeah, last year was 56-41 in Raleigh. The last game in Clemson in 2014, Clemson won 41-0, and we've won 4 in a row overall, 6 in a row at home.
Yeah,
so at home,
12 total.
At home, and actually Dave Doran, I think is the name of the coach for NC State. He's 0-3 against Clemson. He's never beaten us.
Yeah.
So bodes well. We lead the all-time series 55-28-1.
Now, 9 out of the last 19 games have been decided by 8 points or less.
Yes.
So that's worth
so
noting.
it has been, and NC State has kind of always been one of those teams that, like we talked about Georgia Tech, even though Georgia Tech normally squeaks it out on us, where they give us a little bit more trouble than they should.
Reminds me of the basketball team. They're always just so pesky.
Yeah. So, if you look at the Atlantic right now, Clemson and NC State are both at the top. They're Clemson's 3-0 at ACC play. NC State's 1-0. Louisville with 2-1 because of that loss. But I don't really see NC State as like a sleeper for the Atlantic.
I don't see them as a big threat. I think it's at home for us. I think we'll be in good shape. Now, it's worth noting that NC State's quarterback, Ryan Finley, he is the 4th best completion percentage in the country.
Wow.
And that's including the game they had in the rain. So he's having a pretty strong year.
He probably didn't throw the ball too much, though, during that game.
But still, I mean, his completion percentage couldn't have been that good. He's had 9 touchdowns, yet to throw an interception, so turnovers might not be.
Oh, that's impressive.
They're good on turnovers, so I think if this is a better state team than we've seen in years past, I think they've definitely gotten better. I could see us winning like 42-24 or something.
Oh, so you think it's not very? I mean,
I
two or
think
three touchdowns. 2 or 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I think we'll be in good shape. It should be over by the end of the third quarter, and we'll be cruising through the fourth.
I think that we'll come out strong. I do think that NC State's better than some people are giving them credit for. I wouldn't put too much on the Notre Dame win because of the conditions.
Look at the schedule.
The conditions and the way the entire game. It was not like NC State miraculous. I mean, they did miraculously pull it off, but there wasn't like
a
sustained, excellent performance throughout the game that led them to beating Notre Dame. So it was kind of a hollow win.
They could be pesky. They could hang around. I think our offense has really been clicking
at home.
Lately. We should be okay.
Shouldn't be too much of a problem.
Yeah, we should. It could be like the Georgia Tech game a few years ago. I think we won like 33-16 or something like that.
Maybe a touchdown or two lead at the half, and then by the third quarter, starting to pull away.
Now we got really good offensive production last game. The run game was really good, especially against Boston College.
Yes.
And there's a stat here. Clemson is 78-0-1 when we gain at least 200 yards rushing and 200 yards passing. So really, the
200 yards rushing is a lot.
It is.
That's a lot to ask for, though.
That's what you want to get is a lot of rushing.
For sure.
That's what we got to look for with Gallman.
For sure. Yeah. And looking at the fact that we're 6-0, that's the 4th time in the last 5 years. And with the win last Friday against BC, we talked about Clemson had a record in Friday games, even though they're not that common. It was actually our first regular season Friday win since 1952.
I can't imagine we played that much.
It is probably not too many, but again, it was a pretty historic night. And this is interesting. This is also the first time since 1988 that Clemson and NC State enter the game having played at least 5 games and both teams having a winning percentage better than .8.
Okay.
So historically, it hasn't.
I don't think we've usually played them this early, so that could impact it a little bit.
Yeah, the Textile Bowl has always kind of been towards the end of the season. But again, when you look at our home, we've won 19 straight at home. That's a school record, longest active streak in the nation. We've won, and this is also really interesting, 42 consecutive games against teams who were not ranked. Do you know who our last loss was to?
Unranked team, you said?
Yeah.
Is it South Carolina?
No, it was NC State.
Was it really?
Our last loss to an unranked team was NC State.
Tech, too.
We won 42 consecutive games, and we've also won 12 consecutive conference games. Again, with our last, our record the last 2 years, obviously our only loss has been to Alabama in the postseason. And another stat that, again, really isn't that big of it's just an interesting tidbit. We're the only school in the Power 5 to have at least 3 road wins this season.
Wow.
So we travel well. That's something that could be beneficial. That's why with the Clemson-Michigan, when Jake tweeted out about who you'd pick, I would give the edge to Clemson just because the road test we've passed the road test thus far this season.
Just don't see how you can say that and still have Michigan ahead of them, but
there's a lot of jumbling around that'll happen before.
It's tough to predict. It
the
really
end of the
is.
season. Oh, absolutely. And I mean, we're not even getting paid. We're just doing this for fun. Whereas you got people on ESPN that are, getting paid to predict games, and they may be more or less accurate than the weatherman, but it doesn't really matter. It's all in good fun. So, but I see Clemson winning handily.
I think we'll be in.
Like you said, probably in the 40s, mid 40s for us, and maybe upper 20s, maybe low 30s for NC State.
Really
They'll
want
put
to see
up some
us.
offensive performance.
Really want to see us have a complete game, though.
Yeah. Well, that pretty much wraps it up for us. For Bradley Kendall, I'm Jay Smith, and this has been After Further Review. We'll see you next week.
Hit us up on Twitter @ReviewShow. Thank you for watching.
What you doing?
Safety's out there.
Oh.
Did he cut us off?
May have.
Text him real quick. don't see him in the back. He might be off to the side.
He's probably in the meeting.
Well, we're used to it from last week being on a little extra time. So
Yeah, I mean,
something we haven't seen before.
I know that I'm going to get a lot of flack, even though I already have about the top like 5, 6, and I know that Clemson being out of the top 4 is going to tick a lot of people off. It's just I think that I haven't seen. I know what they're capable of. I know what they're capable of. I just haven't seen it yet. And again, you have the players saying that at the pressers today. That was one of the first things Deshaun said. He's like, "Excuse me, haven't played our best game yet."
Yeah, Mark says we're still on. So I think we're about to be off.
Are we? Okay.
Yep, Freddie's back there.
Cutting us off.
Good.
We'll see y'all next
Yep.
week.